probably heard someone say that if you want to build wealth in real estate, you've got to buy apartments. Multifamily, apartment buildings. Everyone talks about them like they're the gold standard of real estate investing. But here's the reality that a lot of people ignore. Apartments are not the only great real estate investment, and in many cases, there's other options that may be a lot more favorable. See, apartments are very difficult to manage. People are living there, that's their home. Very management intensive. You've got to have people ready to go make repairs at the snap of a finger at any time. You've got tenants coming and going constantly. Depending on how big the property is, you may have a whole staff that you have to manage. And people are there 24/7. You've got to be available to meet their needs whenever they call, no matter what time that is. So in this video, I want to tell you about another type of commercial real estate that is great for investment. It's much simpler to manage. The buildings are usually a lot more straightforward, and the leases are often much more landlord friendly. And that property type is industrial real estate. So let's talk about what industrial real estate actually is, why investors love it, why markets like Houston are booming in the industrial real estate sector, and what it actually costs to get started in investing in industrial properties. And if you've only ever thought about investing in apartments, this might completely change how you think about commercial real estate. Before we jump in, quick background. My name is Brandon Avedikian. I'm the founder of Aspire CRE. We are a modern commercial real estate services firm. We provide brokerage and property management services. We're based in Houston, and we've grown to over 25 people since I started the company about 3 years ago. And our firm does several different property types. We do office buildings, we do retail buildings, we do industrial buildings, we do land. And I'm talking to investors and owners of commercial real estate every single day. And one of the asset classes that has become increasingly popular over the past few years is industrial real estate. And in high growth markets like Houston, industrial real estate has gotten really popular. And so what exactly is industrial real estate? Industrial real estate are properties that are used to store, to produce, for logistics, or to run a business that needs warehouse space. And earlier I mentioned that they're much simpler than apartments. Why did I say that? Well, first of all, nobody's living there, hopefully. If someone's living in your industrial building, you may have a bigger issue. But industrial buildings are used for businesses, and most industrial leases are triple net. And in a triple net lease, the tenant is responsible for most repairs and routine maintenance. So you're not going to get a call at 3 a.m. because the toilet's leaking or because the sink has an issue. They're not going to call you when their lights are out because their lease requires them in most cases to deal with those things themselves. And so property management is still very important for industrial buildings, but you're going to have a lot fewer tenants in a property because think about it, an apartment unit is 1,000 feet. Some industrial properties have small tenants as low as 1,000 feet, but generally they're a lot larger and they're a lot less high maintenance. These are businesses, not consumers. That, at the end of the day, that's the biggest difference. You're leasing to a business, not a consumer, and your customer is not sleeping there every night. They're using it to run their business and leaving at night. And so let's get into the different types of industrial real estate. First, you have small warehouse buildings, which are usually used by contractors and small local businesses. Then you have flex or light industrial buildings, which sometimes have a little bit more of an office component. You'll see labs oftentimes in these buildings, and they're used for a wide variety of different uses and business types. Then you move up to distribution centers, which are generally a lot larger, and this is where goods are stored and shipped. This is where you'll see Amazon's, UPS, big third-party logistics companies, and many other types of tenants, but you've got 18-wheeler trucks coming in and out. You want these buildings to be as tall as possible so you can stack your product. And these have really boomed over the past number of years as e-commerce continues to grow. Then you have manufacturing facilities, which can be pretty specialized build-outs, and in manufacturing facilities, tenants are actually making product in the space. And so when businesses move into an industrial property, it's critical for their operations. They are there because either their employees live nearby or it's close to where their customers are. And generally speaking, when tenants move in, they don't want to move. They typically stay a lot longer than an apartment tenant's going to stay. They are using the space to make a profit for the business that they are operating, and moving is a disruption. So the longer they stay, the less disruption, and oftentimes you'll have tenants stay in a flex space for 5, 10, 15, sometimes even longer. And I mentioned the lease structure, but let's get into that in a little more detail. Investors love industrial buildings in part because of the triple net lease structure. And by triple net lease, that means the tenant pays for the operating expenses of the property. So the tenants pay for the property taxes, the tenants pay for the insurance, the tenants pay for the landscaping, to repaint the parking lot, to make minor repairs. And so instead of charging a tenant rent and then paying expenses out of that rent and hoping there's a profit left over, in industrial, you're charging the tenants rent, and that is your operating profit, is the rent that they're paying you. And then you bill them separately for the cost to run the property. And so it's a much more predictable, much simpler, and much more favorable structure for the landlord than a lease where, like an apartment, where the tenant's paying $2,000 a month, and if there's a bunch of repairs, the tenants are still paying $2,000 a month, and the landlord has to cover all those costs. And demand for industrial space has been extremely strong, even through the volatile market the past few years. In Houston, for example, the average triple net rent hit $10.67 per foot in Q4 of 2025, which is a 41% increase over where rents were 5 years prior. And so that means if you owned a building 5 years ago, the market rents have increased 41%. Your income is way higher. The tenants are continuing to pay those expenses. And as expenses go up, the tenants are paying for those increased expenses. So property taxes have gone up. Insurance costs have gone up. The landlords are not eating those costs when they have occupied industrial properties. The tenants are paying those costs. Compare that to a multifamily property where the tenants are paying the rent, and if your property taxes go up 40%, the landlord has to pay those taxes, and the tenant's rent does not go up. Now, when the tenant's lease comes up for renewal on an apartment, you can try to increase those rents, but if the market rents aren't going up and they can go next door for cheaper or the same as your building, you're not going to be able to increase your rents to make up for the increased property taxes, insurance, and maintenance costs. And so what do tenants need in these buildings? Well, they normally need some office space for their staff. They need some warehouse space to store their product or manufacture their goods or do whatever that they're in business to do. They don't need amenities. They don't need fitness centers. They don't need pools. They don't need you to provide them an area to barbecue. All the amenities that apartment owners have to provide, you don't have to provide those to industrial tenants. They're not there for luxury. They are there to run their business and make money. They do not care about having a pool, and in fact, it would be crazy to provide a pool to industrial tenants. And so there's so much less to deal with. They're so much simpler, and that is why investors are flocking to industrial properties. Now, that doesn't mean there's no risk involved in buying industrial properties. Of course, there's risk. There's risk in everything. Rents can go down. A bunch of new buildings can be built, which increases supply, which could make vacancy go up. Tenants can go out of business. You may have unexpected costs come up if a tenant goes out of business and you've got to release the space. If a tenant leaves a space that's highly specialized, it could be expensive to release, or it could take a while. And so industrial is not perfect by any means, but it is a great asset class that continues to grow and will continue to grow in areas where population is growing. And at the end of the day, as more homes are built in an area, that's going to increase the demand for industrial space in the same area, because industrial tenants are generally serving the rooftops that live nearby, whether that's they're making goods that they need, they're distributing things they buy online, or they're HVAC companies that come repair, or plumbers or electricians that come fix HVAC, plumbing, and electrical issues in the rooftops that live nearby. And so when areas continue to grow, it's pretty predictable that industrial demand is going to grow as well, which creates opportunity for industrial investors. So how much does it actually cost to buy an industrial building? Well, that depends. I mean, you can buy an industrial building for a few $100,000 up to over $100 million. But I would say, generally speaking, the entry point for most industrial buildings would be $1 to $2 million on the low end. And then as you get into the $3, $5, $10 million range, there's a lot of opportunity. And as you buy bigger properties, you generally have more scale, which makes management easier. You can afford professional property managers with good staff and great accounting, or you can hire your own staff if you're going to do that yourself. But, the smaller the property, generally speaking, the harder it is on the management side, because you just don't have as many resources to help with the management of smaller properties. So now you may be asking, well, this sounds great, but where do I find good deals? Well, there's a couple different ways you can approach it. The first way is you can try looking for deals yourself. You can look on LoopNet, you can look on CoStar, you can look on Crexi, other online platforms. You can look up owners of properties that meet the criteria you're looking for and call them yourself. And a lot of people go this path. It's a lot of work. You got to really know your stuff. You don't have anyone advising you if you're going about it alone. And you've got to constantly be keeping track of what's on the market, what is pricing. You've got to learn how to evaluate what's a good deal and what's not a good deal, so you don't spend your time looking at deals that make no sense. But the other way that you can find deals is to work with a commercial real estate broker that specializes in industrial. And if you work with a broker, they are going to look at deals that are on the market for you. A good broker is going to have a pipeline of off-market deals as well. A good broker is going to learn exactly what you're looking for, to the specific deal size, to the tenant profile, to the age of the building, and then they can just send you deals that they've already vetted, and you can just focus on underwriting those deals instead of spinning your wheels looking around on the internet or making a bunch of calls that don't get returned to owners of properties you may want to buy. So in closing, multifamily apartments are not the only path to building wealth in commercial real estate. In my opinion, industrial is a much more simple and profitable over the long-term asset class than multifamily. You've got strong tenant demand, you've got triple net lease structures, and you've got really strong fundamentals on the demand side, particularly in markets that are growing like Houston. If you found this video helpful and want to learn more about commercial real estate, be sure to hit the subscribe button and the like button. And please also be sure to send this to anyone that is looking to learn more about commercial real estate. Thank you for joining us. We will see you on the next one.